started then,
Yeah,
shall
let's
we?
do that.
Sounds good, bro.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show for you sorted out for today. We actually don't have anything sorted out for you today. I'm excited for this because Seb here set us up early very well to go into this open and see where the conversation went. So I'm excited for that. And while I'm excited for that, y'all should be too. Make sure you like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails when we go live, which is, of course, Wednesdays for the Gold Mine and Fridays for the Collective. And I don't think we need to get into any sort of intros, but I want to ask you guys, it is the holiday season right now. What do you guys think of this period of time overall? What do you think, Seb?
Very interesting. Yeah, generally speaking, especially as a youth, I really enjoyed the festivities, like the lights and the snow and everything. And it's just, I think it brings obviously a festive kind of feel to life. And sometimes when life can be a little bit blah at time, it's kind of nice to have, that inject every year if it's done correctly and not necessarily by obligation, but because you want to and engage in it. For me, it's been very different this year because we're here in southern Alberta, whereas in the Lower Mainland, it's not a thing really anymore at all, right? Like it's gone in a different direction. But here, it was really cool to see sort of what Christmas spirit sort of looked like when I was in the 80s, say, or very, very early 90s. And, I live in a remote community that has an incredible sense of community. Incredible. I have never seen anything like it. I've actually never experienced that in my life. And seeing the kids all getting engaged into caroling and doing all of those things has been really a gift for me, and brought back some of the earliest memories that I have of Christmas. And of course, I get to share it with the kids here and Alex, of course, and it's been quite special. Now, it's nice as well because I have a little bit of snow, but hardly anything, and it's 10 degrees today. So I wasn't even wearing a jacket, and I haven't for the last week or so. And I don't know if you knew this, Shaun, but David and I are about an hour and 30 minutes away from each other, and we are generally 20 degrees different. Like I remember 2 weeks ago, he was at -20. It was +8 here. So on the Montana border, it's just very, very warm. And yes, there are times where things go, completely pear-shaped in the February, I've been told late February or mid-February generally, where the winds will pick up and the temperatures will drop substantially, but it's sort of very short and sweet. And so it's been a real good blend of having, 10-degree temperature, the colors of the prairies and everything, and of course the Christmas spirit being in full force. So it's been quite nice, actually. I really enjoy it.
Southern Alberta communities, man, they're awesome. Shaun, what are you gonna say?
Well, so first of all, I got to say that I do like free-flowing conversations that we don't come into with a whole pile of ideas or thoughts. And in fact, I'm glad that Seb said, let's just do a free flow, because Chance and I'd said this to Chance several days ago when we just got back from Thailand, that as is my way, I am unsettled with the status quo. And so for 2024, of course, we've had a certain approach to podcasts, but I'd said specifically to Chance, hey, listen, 2025, things have got to change. Things have to change because I am not happy with non-evolvement. And so what I did say was, I think 2025, you have to, Chance, dial back some moderation and let things free flow a little bit more, which makes your job trickier, Chance, because you have to understand the nuance of the moment, or when to step in and when to stay out. And, 2024 as an example, Chance has nailed that. But with 2025 coming in, now it's his job to get even more sophisticated in that approach to the free-flowing conversation. And so I'm looking forward to 2025's podcasts, because I think that we will have more of a organic, free-flowing unfolding of the conversation naturally, rather than quite as much direction. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, I'm looking forward to that. Now to the question for Christmas, or for this time of year. I do. I've never been a big Christmas guy. I'm still not a big Christmas guy. But what I do appreciate, what I do enjoy, I guess I'll go so far as to say what I love is the fact that my wife, Doreen, is all about Christmas. She loves Christmas. She loves the Christmas tree. She loves putting the Christmas tree up. She loves all the decorations. She loves this time of year, the whole thing. She loves Christmas. When we're overseas, various countries, if there's a store that has Christmas decorations in it, she's in there looking at those Christmas decorations. I think it's cool as hell. But that's not the way I was raised, and that's not kind of who I am. So it's nice to have someone, a partner, who loves on the aspect of this time of year, which gives me perspective or context on where I am and how I can do better at this time of year. Now, I've said that, Christmas is generally good. I will throw in something else, though, and it has been kind of eating me up a little bit over the last few days. And by few days, I mean like kind of over a week now. And it is social media posts that talk about how it's almost a victim mentality time of year. The discussions are about how much pressure is involved on people and how if your neighbor's having a great time and putting up all the great Christmas photos of the great Christmas tree, but you don't have a Christmas tree, how you should feel sad and how it sucks for the rest of us who don't enjoy Christmas. And so there's almost this divisiveness between the joyfulness of Christmas and how much pressure Christmas puts on a person. And I believe, and I've seen it happen with people I know on social media, that each post just builds on itself until Christmas is a raging victim mentality mode for some people. And so I'm just throwing that out there as part of my thoughts over the last few days. Curious to see what you guys think.
It's a very interesting point. I've always said I'm not a big Christmas guy either. I've never really liked the time period. I find it inundating because there's no way to kind of escape it. Anywhere you go, everything you do has to do with Christmas. So it becomes very inundating. But I do see your point in terms of it can become very, woe is me. Like, how dare you have a good time because I can't? Like that leap into that mindset I never got to. But Christmas as a whole, there is a lot of there's no way to get out of it. And in the Western world, I should say, here in Canada at least, and parts of the states that I've been into during this time period, there's decorations everywhere, there's presents everywhere, and there's things that are saying
like... It starts in November. It starts in October. Exactly.
It's pretty bad. So it's very inundating. I always found it so. Seb, what are you thinking?
Yeah, man, I think you both hit a nail on the head on that, but I think that it goes in line with this societal victimhood issues that we're having. And it just bleeds and trickles into absolutely every aspect of our lives. It really doesn't matter what it is. Christmas is just one of the many examples where we're seeing it. It's really funny because think of it this way. What is Vikash parade or Vikash parade? The Indian, the South Asian festival that, those are tied into, certain values and certain cultural practices and certain things. And when you're invited there as a foreigner, as somebody that isn't a part of the culture, as somebody that doesn't engage in some of the secular or the religious practices or any of that, you go in there, you eat your face off, they treat you like gold, you do all this stuff, you're having a blast, they're dancing, they're entertaining, they're doing the thing, and you come out of there, you injected some joy in your life. Like, I don't care. Like, you don't have to buy into absolutely everything you do. Just try to engage with different things, And Shaun, you're the one that's preaching this the best of anybody I know, as far as being curious and all of those things, and inquisitive and getting engaged. It's really funny, man. If you're, think of it this way, when you're I don't know, maybe 14, 15 years old. Remember that time where you're at a party and nobody interested in you seemingly, or you projected out on everybody else, and next thing you know, you were in a corner pouting, and everybody was having a great time, and you were just having the worst time ever. That's a complete projection. Like, you are doing that, and you are bringing that to yourself. And of course, at that age, you don't have the coping mechanisms, and you don't have the analytical mind to break this down and see, like, oh, I'm projecting, I'm going to do something different. But as an adult, you should have the ability to do that, because that's essentially what happens. That victimhood mentality in relation to Christmas or events like this are kind of like the go in the corner sobbing or pouting because at the party nobody wants to be friends with you. But really, everybody wants you engaged in that party. You're the only one that doesn't want to see yourself engaged in the party, so that you can then become the victim of not being engaged in the party. And so I think those are things that require an open mind. And I'm not suggesting that you have to embrace the whole thing and start decorating your place and all of those things, but like, let people have fun with whatever their practices are, if they're not intruding on your freedom, or if they're not dangerous, or for you. I think appreciate the fact that if it makes them happy, you should be happy that other people are happy. Not when other people are happy, it sheds and brings the spotlights to your insecurities, your fears, and your doubts.
This is an interesting point. When I was doing my chat for my son's school for Remembrance Day, one of the things I brought up was President Kennedy's statement: ask not what you can do for your country, or ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I just correlated that as you were talking was when I was talking to my team at jiu-jitsu, one of the things I asked them what they liked about this time of year, and they said, when people make an effort. And that's really what it comes down to. I think what you're saying is, like, if you're not having a great time during this period of the year, go out and have a good time. Go seek to have a good time, or seek to give of yourself to someone else. And I think that's a big part of this time of year, but it gets twisted over time into, why isn't anybody doing it for me? Why isn't anybody doing it when it's not really about that? Shaun, you got any thoughts on this?
Just that I think, like all things, and I'm not going to point the finger at anyone. I'll point the finger at myself as the example. Like all things, we all need to pattern interrupt ourselves. And so out on social media, if someone gets on a roll day after day, they keep reinforcing the same message, that message tends to start building. It tends to start escalating until the words that are being said are stronger, the feelings are more intense. 4 weeks later, the same person is saying the same thing, but with such conviction that they truly believe it. It might have started out not quite lighthearted, but it might have started out as, I'm kind of having a tough day. But then a month later, it's like, the problem is not them. The problem is a thing. And that's the victim mentality setting in. And so we all have to pattern interrupt ourselves. I go back and look at some of the stuff that I've said on social media, a week or two ago. I'll quickly review and make sure that I'm on track, that I'm not losing my way, that I'm not being negative, that I'm not representing something that sucks. I check myself. I literally said it in my live chat this morning that I put up a post this morning on Instagram of me pulling out this sword and the one behind me. And rather than me try to perceive what others might think, or rather than asking others what they might think about the image, I asked two robots, ChatGPT and Claude Sonnet, what they thought of the image. So their perception is what I posted up on social media this morning. Because life is perception, man. Reality is perception. And so my social media content, as I said in my live chat today, I expect my friends to keep me on track. If I'm going a little off the rails, it's their job to put me in check, to jack me up, to square me away. I expect it. And if it's not happening, then I tell myself that I'm not too far off the rails. But I always check on my past content. And now just for clarity, I asked a couple of robots to make sure that I am not losing my way. And what does losing my way mean? It means somehow over a period of time, without paying attention, all of a sudden I'm hating on Christmas because Seb's having a great Christmas. That's not how it should play out. We've always got to pattern interrupt ourselves and make sure that the voices in our heads are not lying to us.
Now, I have a question on that, because you're saying, you expect the people around you to check you and make sure that you're not going too far off the rails, but you have developed a team around you that you trust and love, and make sure like the people that you've surrounded yourself with are awesome people. And I just have the question I go on to is like, what if you don't have those people? If you are really alone in the world, which there are lots of people out there right now that are just alone in the world, where do we go from there? How do we start to bridge out of that position? Because it's easy to go down a rabbit hole when you're on your own. What do you guys think, Seb?
Yeah, that's a really interesting proposition, because now what needs to happen is you need to build yourself up to a level where great people are going to want to be around. So it's kind of the egg and the chicken and the egg type deal, right? It's really difficult if you're caught in a cycle. So I think for me, what I would focus on is perhaps going back to the fundamentals, because you build up these things, and next thing you know, you're 17 layers deep in that victimhood, or 17 layers deep in that whatever hole that you're in, that becomes a dark hole or a black hole, as your social media platform can be. Certainly social media itself can be. But I think that at some point, if you're unable to bring the right people around you, then the question, and again, to Shaun's point, the pattern interrupts becomes, what can I do differently? What can I do differently so that I actually have people around me that elevate me, as opposed to, and it's tough, because if you're stuck in that cycle, like, you need to realize that you're stuck in the cycle, and if nobody's there to tell you or to help you out and tell you that perhaps you're stuck in a cycle, then you need to really, I don't know, like, you need to have that capacity for introspection. Now, one of the problems of people like this is that a lot of the times, and that can be anybody, by the way, including myself, anybody, right? But if you don't have the capacity for introspection, that is a massive problem, because now how do you know? So you have nobody around you, and you don't have the capacity for introspection. But I would say this: when you're looking at your social media platform, or when you're looking at the stuff that you're putting out, or anything that you get engaged in, how much of your day is spent on negative emotions? How much of your day is spent when you open your Instagram in the morning, first thing, which I do not recommend, but when you do it and you start looking at things, how quickly does your heart rate starts accelerating, because you're going to engage in conflict or in DMs with people, or you're going to respond to 17 comments you left. And we all know, I was making a joke about this a few while ago. You comment on something that's seemingly innocuous. It gives you the gratification, the instant gratification of saying a word, but that is the gift that keeps on giving, but quite in the wrong ways. And that comment will be commented on for 26 months. So what I started doing, and Shaun, I don't know if I was talking to you about this, but I feel I might have. What I started doing is going back to some of the comments I put on some posts and remove them, because my capacity and my filter for negative emotions is non-existent. It's non-existent. There used to be a time where I was really good with this, and somehow it's very, very difficult now. I try to eliminate it, if not completely, and I'm absolutely not perfect, so I do it all the time. Right? I do it all the time. I will say something, hey, let him have it. Hey. 18 months later, the comments are still flowing. And every time I read them, there's a visceral reaction that occurs there. So when if you don't have the capacity for introspection in terms of understanding your behavior specifically, then just look at the result of your behavior. So symptomology. How do I feel when I open my social media? Is it entertaining, and is it enlightening, and is it negative? Do I get upset? Do I get spooled up? Do I get this anxious feeling in your stomach that when you put a comment in and you go out to do something with your family, you can't wait to look again to see what the other guy or the other girl came back to say, and that you can re-engage and what your next argument is going to be and where you're going with this. And I think that you'll start realizing that, man, I'm doing a lot of things that are creating more harm than good.
It's funny you say that. There was a point in time just a while ago, I was in a really bad mood. I had a really bad day, and I went on social media to try and and I was going to ruminate a little bit and just watch some angry stuff. And I had a bunch of messages from people who are like, bam, hey, thanks for doing what you do on the collective. And somebody sent me this motivational reel, and somebody else. And I was like, man, I surround myself with awesome people. I wanted to feel bad, but now I can't. Shaun, you got any points on any of this?
No real points other than I think it's a great topic that we're talking about right now. And I don't want anyone out there to think that that I'm bummed at the whole world. I'm just bummed at the general theme of negativity based on victimhood, because it's so unnecessary. And I think every human has the right or has the position to be able to complain about something. Every day, there's something that happens in our day that sucks. But it's what you do with that and how much you complain about it. And I think that I try to, and I don't do it well all the time, but I try to refer back to a moment in my military career where I was an instructor and I had a medal. I guess it would have been a note holder. And I had a sticker on this medal note holder that said, no whiners, or it was whiners in a big red circle with a slash through it. No whiners. And I held that as kind of like one of my mantras when I was in the military. I didn't care for whining. I didn't care for whiners. And the fact that I had such a dislike for anyone who was whining in the moment, I've kind of held it as sort of a way of life. Try not to whine too much. Now, I whine from time to time, but the less whining, the better. And so I've found that when it comes to social media, when it comes to life, we've all got opportunity to whine, but the less you whine, the better your life. Because you can replace action with whining. You don't have to take a step forward positively. You can hang out where you are negatively and just whine about how the world sucks. But the world is your own creation. This life journey that you're on, that we're all on, that is our world. And so we are responsible for our world, our inner world and our outer world. Who you align with is your world. You can align with boneheads, or you can align with cool people, and that's your world. If you align with people who suck, your world sucks, but you put yourself there by choice. Or you put yourself there incrementally, bit by bit by bit, while you weren't paying attention. And over the years, you went from hanging out with people who were squared away and living a positive direction. And a few years later, you're hanging out with frickin' losers who suck and are dragging you down. And one morning you wake up and you find yourself in that position. And you don't know how you got there, but you know you're there. And that's the moment that you stop your whining, you stop your victim mentality, and you do something about it. And so for me, slashing out the whining of life is a good way to get someone moving forward. That's my thought right now.
Interesting. Seb, you got something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little something. This is an interesting conversation because it hits home for me a little bit there. I wore the hat a little recently. I think that when all around you seems to be falling apart, I think that it's and what I mean by that is, some societal problems and the direction of things, and certain things. I find that I used to never post anything about politics, and we're certainly not going to talk about it, but I'm just saying, like, I used to never do that because that was something that really dragged me down, and I didn't care for it, and I knew that my injects were, somewhat irrelevant, to a point where I realized that by not talking about it sometimes, or by not talking about certain things sometimes, we let those certain things happen. And so it's not just about, it's almost like you need to learn to split the difference also. What is worth engaging in that might bring a little bit of light on a problem? And once that problem becomes everybody's problem or a bunch of people's problems, and these peoples are getting together, things are changing. So it's a dangerous game to play from a positivity standpoint. I think that recently I looked back, and I even had this conversation with Alex, and I said, I used to never post these things and some opinions on this and that and the other thing, but I felt compelled to do it because of the fact that I felt like my world was slipping, like the stuff, everything that I loved, that I was really attached to, that made sort of life what it was. A lot of those things were seemingly being taken away by a message that was much stronger than an underlying message that wasn't being communicated, because those that have the capacity to communicate it do not communicate it. And so I found myself in a bit of a weird place, and I think that inherently, by having more people engage in that messaging, certain things changed, and so it's difficult, because it's like, well, if I don't talk about it, I can't complain about it. If I complain about it, I'm not doing anything about it. So is there anything else? Of course, any other actions that can be taken that don't involve social media, that can be taken in order to right a wrong, or a perceived wrong, so to speak. And so, I feel that, Shaun, like I had to have that moment of realization, and it came down to exactly what I was talking about earlier. Okay, I understand what I am saying, and I understand that to a certain extent it makes sense, and that a message sort of needed to go out, like, hey guys, is anybody paying attention to everything around us here? Because I don't know if it's just me, but like, this is weird, right? And also splitting that difference with what am I bringing to the people when they're opening their social media, exactly as you alluded to earlier, Chance. I want to be that. I want to be that beacon. I want people getting on social media to take a break because they need it, or because they want to engage in it for a little bit, to see something that really uplifts them, instead of doing the other way around. So I was really struggling with some of the stuff that myself had posted, in recent times. And then the other piece to this is, what I came to realize is that, and again, we talk about misinformation, we talk about disinformation, we talk about a variety of different things, but a lot of those clips, especially when it comes to reels or stories, are really, really lacking context. And what happens is, unfortunately, somebody always knows the context. And so when you post something and you're like, check this out, this is preposterous, and then somebody's in your DM going, well, actually I was there, and here's what really happened, so there is a lot of clickbaiting going on. And I'm not suggesting that some of those don't have value, that some of those don't have an accurate message being depicted, and some of them are warranted to be concerning. But I would say that the vast majority of stuff is catered to clickbait. It just is. And so when you repost a story, so I really, for 2025, it's not a New Year's resolution. It started already. I don't wait for January 1st to do it, but for me, it was about, okay, so my stories of positivity, of how great life on the farm can be, or how great the outdoors can be, those things are unequivocally real. I can post these all day. It's helping people. It's letting them know to go outside and engage in life. But these other things here, I actually don't need them. They bring me a ton more negative returns. And so the return on investment is actually a deficit in my proverbial, emotional bank account, so to speak. And so, I truly believe that. And I think you're absolutely right, Shaun, is what I'm saying, in a nutshell.
There's a little bit of a conundrum here, because you're right. If you no whining gets action, gets things done, right? But the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if you want change in any way, it needs to be brought up somewhere, somehow. But we can't whine about anything, right? So just bringing up the fact that there is an issue can come across as whining. So we're sitting in there's a weird gray zone in between those of you got to bring up problems, but you can't whine about it. So, Shaun, what do you got?
I think it comes down to a person's track record. And so if you've been on social media for longer than a week, it means that you now have a track record. And if your track record is constantly whining about the same subject, now you're a whiner, baby. But if you come on occasionally and raise something that needs to be addressed, say what you got to say in a cool way, and then move on, not constantly raising it every single day that week for the rest of the year, for the rest of your life, that is whining. And so to Seb's point, and I agree with him, and this is to me, the balance is so tricky. I consider it as fraught with danger. For me, I try to walk a good line, a straight line, the line that's appropriate for the time. And so if I'm going to raise an issue that is contentious, I try to do it in a way that gives wiggle room for everyone in the conversation so that we can have a freaking conversation about it, rather than me launching like an artillery barrage of whining and not leaving space to have a conversation. That is the trick. And so anytime a person is posting on social media, a pattern is being formed. My life is all about forming patterns ever since I can remember. And so I get a pattern on someone pretty quickly. And if the pattern is established as that freaking dude is nonstop whining, it's hard to engage with a person like that. Now, I'll say this as a follow-on, and maybe we can talk about this a touch. It's a bit of a deviation. If someone knows me on social media and they need some help and they reach out to me, they should know by now that I will accept no nonsense. If you expect to come and hang out with me in my DMs for a few weeks so that we can go back and forth to be helpful to each other, if you're showing up to whine, move right along, because I don't have the patience, the time, the energy to be bombarded with negativity or bombarded with whining. I keep an open mind on these things. And so I expect some civil discourse back and forth that is intelligent and balanced. Don't ever come into my DMs thinking that you're going to complain for the rest of your life, because I will shut down that grid in a hard way. And people might think that that sounds callous or non-supportive or whatever, but that is the way I manage my time. If you jump into my time, you jump into my life. I'm not jumping into yours, you're jumping into mine. And you want life energy from me, there's a way to do it. And if you don't know how to do that yet because you don't know anything about me, then figure it out. Listen to the things I say in various podcasts, in various social media comments. I'm an easy guy to read to some degree. You should know what you're facing when you drop into my DMs. And if you don't, that tells me a lot about you. If you show up unprepared or all ill-educated on how the conversation is going to play out, it almost makes me feel like I'm not going to give you time because you didn't take the time to get to know the time that we're about to step into. It's almost disrespectful. And so I don't mind a pattern interrupt, and I don't mind someone trying to change their ways. What I do mind is someone who takes my life energy that I could be spending with my kids, with my wife, with my dog, on my bike, that I could be making a coffee. That is my life. And that has to have some value, not just to me, but to someone who's jumping into my time. And so that's something that's been on my mind a little bit as well. What do you guys think?
I love it. The you put some really cool images in my head when you said an artillery barrage of whining. I pictured one of those, the grad rockets with all the rocket trucks, and I was just picturing like wah 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 wah. Flying off. Yes. But to your point, I think when most people reach out for help, what they're reaching out for is a crutch, not help. And I think this is a challenge because I know I did this a few times when I was in a really rough spot. What I wanted was to just hand off the burden, just like hand off the weight, all of the bad things. And that's what it felt like by whining, was just to kind of like, get here, you take it, for just give me a minute of break, versus someone who is actually helping is going to help you break those down into smaller pieces, and then you can start working on them. And I think that is the challenge for a lot of people who've never asked for help. They don't know what help looks like. They just kind of want to get out from under whatever it is they're dealing with. And that's a really big challenge for somebody that is, I've never asked for help before. I'm going to reach out to somebody and say, hey man, that my life really sucks. And Shaun's going to be like, well, you put yourself there. And that's not taking my weight, right? And I think that is the biggest issue, is not understanding what help actually looks like, which is to turn around and face whatever it is you're facing, dealing with, and then breaking it down into smaller chunks and working on little bits at a time. But most people don't know how to do that. We've never been taught how to receive help. We're more than willing to give help more often than not, but we just don't know how to take it. Do you guys have any thoughts or helpful tips on that? Seb, what do you got?
I'm going to strike at the intersection of you and Shaun, because I think there's great value in that. I think that a lot of people, when they're seeking help, they're doing exactly what you're speaking of, and then they're doing it in a way that's described by Shaun. And I think that what they're really after is validation of their continuous path that they're on, right? Like, so they're coming in not so much to change the direction, but to validate the direction that they're in and to justify it to a certain extent. And I think that that's a very dangerous slope. But the first telltale sign of that is the person coming into your DM having done nothing. Right? Because I've had guys, and my DM, every day there's a bunch of people in there, and listen, I don't have 100,000 followers or 1 million. If you did, most of those people don't even handle their social anyways, because you couldn't, right? But when you have 5, 6, 7, whatever thousand people like tapping into you on the daily, and somebody comes in with their lack of care and attention, or lack of time discernment, and they haven't themselves spent any time doing any research whatsoever. And my favorite line of all time is, hey man, I really want to get into ERT. How should I do that? It's like, dude, I got 1,600 podcasts. Did you listen to any of them? And the fact is, and I'm not suggesting that all these people are doing it nefariously, guys, like, just to be clear, because some of these people are legitimately brand new to my account, and it's the easier path, and we're concerned with instant gratification, so we take the path of least resistance. But I'm going to tell you something. If you're to do anything of meaning in your life, the path of least resistance is the path you should not be traveling, period, ever. And so for me, it's, if I just come about somebody, a new account, and somebody that I find interesting, that has a lot of value in their injects, or in their posts, or in their, I'm going to research that person. And Shaun, I know you do that extensively as well. Just go down 4 years in their account, and read the stuff they write, and read the pictures they post, and what are some of the things that they're sort of sending in the universe. And once I have a grip on that, by then I will have discovered that they have this book or that book, or this podcast, and I will listen to that. And once I listen to the podcast, if I have outstanding questions, I will say, hey, I listened to your podcast, I've read your article on whatever, and I still have some outstanding questions. Would you allow me to, sort of engage that way with them? That is a very different prospect. When somebody hits you like this in the DM, I have time for everybody. I never turn anybody down that does that. But the issue is that's not what happens generally. What happens is the other way around, where I'm going to take the path of least resistance and really try to get something that I can, put into my pipe as smoke on the spot. And as soon as I'm done, without any consideration for the time of the person, I'm going to ask my next question without even having integrated the first question or the first answer into my daily activities or into my day even. Listen, you just asked me a question, take a day to think about it. Take a day to research it. Take a day to look into it. Take a day to process it. And then if you have a follow-up question, we'll do that tomorrow. But don't tell me that the question you just asked me on account of instant gratification, because you've never actually researched anything I've done, that led to me giving you an answer, and now you haven't even finished listening to the answer and you're already on the next question. There's I think the misconception is that there is no work involved in developing, and developing is all about work. You need to be willing to put it in, and every little step of the way is important. And the more you do that with some level of engagement, the more the return of investment is going to be for you in that pursuit, whatever that might be.
I'm digging this. I love the fact that you said put it in your pipe and smoke it, because that is such a great analogy for what is happening. People are looking for that check mark, that little hitter of, yeah, okay, he told me what I need to know, and cool, good to go. And you're right to bring up the fact that there is work involved, because anybody can say, yes, action is the key. You still got to do something about it. You still have to wake up the next morning and engage in that. If people give you philosophical points to think about, I love that. Take a day to think about it. That's or even physical things like, is that really what I want to do? Is that really where I want to go? If, I've heard you guys both say at times where people will send you messages like, I haven't done anything physical in my entire life, and I want to be in JTF tomorrow, or I want to be in the ERT tomorrow. What do I do? It's like, no, just no. There's no point to even discuss this with you at this point, because you're not doing any of the baseline to get prepped for it. I remember when I first signed up for the military, I don't know if they still do this or not, but they make you sit down and watch a video on the trade that you're supposed to be doing, or that you're asking for, so that you have an idea of what you're getting into, even just a little bit. And that's a pretty small amount of research to do. And I went in there well researched. I knew exactly what a combat engineer did, and I knew exactly what they were supposed to be doing and all the tasks that they were, I was really switched on for it. Most people aren't. They just show up and expect to get on a bus. Shaun, you got any additional points on this?
I do. It's our fault. It is our fault. The reason it is the way it is because we let it get to that point. And that's why whenever someone jumps into my DMs, I had it recently, someone who wanted to be in JTF2. I don't want to get into the details, but they were just about to turn 40, and they weren't even in the military at that point. But they had it in their idea that they were going to sign up, somehow shortcut their way to JTF2 in about a day. And then by the time they're 41, they're on the team. And these are adults who have a dream with no context. It's the context of things. The dream is cool, but the context is lacking. And context can come from many sources. If I'm not giving you the context, then Seb can. And if Seb isn't giving you the context, a book can. And if a book isn't giving you context, a video can. And on and on. But the problem is, where we're at today, it's that instant gratification. It is that hopscotching of questions in a DM. If this, then that, and then straight to the next question, and straight to the next question. And if you can stay above it or rise above the hopscotching of the questions, what I see as a pattern is we're not going anywhere in this conversation. I'm just being peppered. I'm being artillery barraged by someone who isn't taking the time to think about what I just wrote to them 10 seconds ago. It is straight onto their own little center of the universe thoughts, where I could be anyone. I could be no one. And they would just hopscotch their way through the conversation with their own idea of how they think the world works, rather than collaborating with me to refine how the world that they want to step into works. And so the reason for this hopscotching is because they've got away with bloody murder all their life. No one has put them in check. No one has said, hey man, shut up. What are you doing about it? Hey man, ... Like getting hard with someone in the DMs rather than holding their hand in the DMs, which is what they've got most of their life. They got their hand held, no pushback. They got to hopscotch however they wanted to, and no one ever said, bro, slow down. Bro, think a bit. Bro, are you an idiot? And so I like to take the opportunity to challenge people in my DMs. If they want to play hopscotch, great. I'm going to put you in check, and then we'll see where it goes. And if you don't like me putting you in check, then move right along and go bug someone else with your questions that are poorly thought out, that you won't listen to the answers on, and years later, you'll still be hopscotching. Everyone, myself included, needs to take a moment in that liminal space of asking a question, then getting an answer, and then pause 2, 3 to consider the liminal moment before you spray out your artillery barrage of poorly thought out questions that you feel string together logically. And so I'll round out my thoughts by saying that I feel the reason that we're at where we're at is because we let it get there.
I want to kind of apply this back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of, the holiday season, and this time period can be very difficult for a lot of people. And I like how you brought this up in the fact that we put ourselves in these positions, right? If this is a difficult time of year for you, understand that you're there due to the actions that you have taken in the past. Now, sometimes there are mitigating circumstances that come in that you have no control over, but you're still in that position. There's no getting out of it. There's no like, oh no, I just need to just do one thing and all of a sudden the world will be grand. No, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of reps in anything to get out of a position that sucks. It's not an overnight thing. Now, that doesn't mean it's not worth it. I think the fact that it takes years, it takes months, it takes all this time and effort, that's what makes it worth it. That's what makes a gift wonderful, is when someone takes the time and the effort to really care about what it is that they're giving you.
Right.
And I think that's the same thing for yourself.
Right. And so I'm just going to throw this at you guys. I'll throw it to the audience. It's the creating action against your inactions. If you're still living in the past, decades later, you're still dwelling on or ruminating on that one thing that one person said to you. That is a lack of action in your internal world. And so if we're talking about Christmas and if someone wants to view this period of time as negative versus positive, well, that's a choice. And what is that choice about? Is that a choice to not face what's going on? Or is it a choice not to be a better person, which is not a gift to you or to anyone else around you? And Christmas, I believe, to some degree, is about giving. And what better gift at Christmas time than to give to everyone around you the gift of positivity?
Bam. Seb, you got anything to follow that?
I don't know, man. Call somebody else. I don't know if I can. You know, those are incredibly compelling points of all of those things. And I think one of the things that we have to remind ourselves is that, and this is the part that makes the work, any inner work, difficult. If you feel like you're at wit's end with whatever it is that's going on in your life, you need to understand that in order for you to get yourself out of hell, you may have to intensify the problem temporarily. You know, engaging in the process of engaging in the process of fixing things, of looking internally, or fixing things that you've done incorrectly for the last 3 decades is no doubt going to be a hell ride. And so you need to understand that, just like I was alluding to earlier in relation to negative emotions that you bring into your life, you may increase the amount of negative emotions that you feel in relation to the work that you are doing when you're engaging in it seriously. But if you've reached that point, there is no coming out of it. So you have two choices. You either intensify the problem temporarily so that you can either eliminate it or vastly mitigate it, or you stay exactly where you are. And in 10 years from now, you won't even be able to intensify the problem, because if you do, it will be catastrophic. So now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You know, you really, really need to understand that if you are at a point where, as Shaun discussed, where everything is about negativity because you're down in the pits of hell, you need to understand that you're going to need to go deeper in the pits of hell in order to get yourself back out of that. And you need to start now, because in 5 years, you will be 5 years older and you will have 5 years more of experience being in the pits of hell, which will make your resistance to going deeper in the pits of hell a lot more difficult. It is not easy. It's not easy. It's just, there is no easy way out of this place. But the beauty is, if we're able to embrace that suck, even temporarily, and go as far and as deep as we can temporarily, and I have the right frames around that, which means understanding that it is going to get worse temporarily. You know, the punch you prepare for is much better than the punch you're not prepared for. And if you self-impose it, it also has a different sort of reaction. You will have a different reaction to it than if it becomes imposed by life. So involuntarily exposed. And so you got two choices: willful exposure right now, as soon as possible, because it's going to get increasingly more difficult, or involuntary exposure, which is going to make everything compounded and much harder. So what do you choose? When you choose between hards, choose the hard that's best for you.
Yeah, this is it made me think of it's going to get worse before it gets better, and it always will. When you first start working out, it's going to make you feel weak as hell, because guess what? That's where you're at. You know, when you first start a martial art, you're going to suck and you're going to get your butt kicked left, right, and center for weeks. And then you're going to slowly get used to it. And then you're slowly going to start to work out of it. And same thing with depression, same thing with any of the post-traumatic stress symptoms that I've dealt with in time. Like, they are horrible when you first start engaging them. But over time, you learn the skills, you learn the capacity, you learn to catch it earlier, you learn to anticipate it, you learn to see where where your guardrails are. And then you can start working from there, right? And it does get easier over time, but it takes consistent effort. You have to work through it over time. Shaun, what are you going to say?
So I've been struggling with a thought for months now, and definitely for the last few weeks, it's been really strong, this thought. And I haven't yet figured out a way to crack the nut on it. I have thought about how I can propose it to the internet, and I have yet to do it. I'll probably do it soonish once I get my verbiage right. But here's the general theme. A lot of people that I track on social media are like hard chargers, like strong men and women who have accomplished things. And if I was to ask them, we need you to save the world, what would you do? They would do anything. I need you to save your family. What would you do? They'd be running for the nearest gun in their gun locker and grabbing all of the ammo and saving their family. I need you to save your community. They'd be the first person to grab a rucksack and go save their community. I need you to ... and they'd be on it, saving the thing. But they don't save themselves. So quick to grab a sharp blade or a 30-round mag, but so slow to save themselves. And why is that? Why is it that good men and women will step up before anyone else to save the planet, but they won't save themselves?
That's a hard question, Seb. What do you got?
I think that a lot of people are engaging themselves in distractions to not have to do the work. And that includes some of those distractions. And I cannot think of a more insidious way to distract yourself than to distract yourself doing something good. Because ultimately, it gives you the impression, and it's not just an impression, it is real. You are out there helping people. And it gives you a sense of self-worth and a sense of value, which is precisely probably challenged by the condition that you are, or the circumstances that you are faced with, that you are refusing to look at. What an insidious way, in a roundabout way, to never have to do it. It's almost like internal virtue signaling. It gives you the exact same dopamine hit and all those pleasure hormones and everything that are flooding your body from doing it. And it's actually real. It's concrete. So it's not like you're virtue signaling and something that isn't real. So it's difficult for anybody to discount it, including yourself. So you're engaging yourself in a process that make you feel good, that is actually good for other people. The problem is the underlying reason and the underpinnings why you're doing it. That's where the digging needs to happen. But it's even equally as difficult to do that if you have justified to yourself all the good work that you are doing. And I'm not suggesting that you're tapping yourself on the shoulder, but it feels that way, you know, especially if people are coming back to you and say, thank you so much for helping and doing all this positive feedback. Then you find yourself really stuck in a place where the very things that you should be addressing, that you are refusing to address, are creating a problem that is good for you and the people that you are helping. I cannot think of a more insidious way to hide the work that you need to do than to do it with something that has value.
This is the curse of external proxy, right? And I think Shaun and you and I talked about this. We did a podcast on it last year, but I did it for years. I ran the Walk for Veterans. I did advocacy, and it was always about other people. I was waking up 2:00 in the morning answering phone calls for guys that were in darker spots than I was, and I was in really bad spots still answering that phone. And it was so much easier to just give to somebody else because, as you said, I felt good about helping someone. I got something out of it, but I would not do the work up until when we started the collective, where I got knife handed a couple of times live on air. Like, smarten the hell up. You need to take care of yourself. And now I can recognize that and do it when somebody calls me at 2 a.m. And if I'm not in the headspace, I've messaged people, hey man, I'm not in the headspace for this. Hit up this person or look for this thing, or here's the hotline number or whatever. And that is I've heard this line many times, like, yes, you may die for your children, but will you live for them? And that is such a key element through, especially the holidays right now, right? Like, yeah, you might be in a rough time. Yeah, we might be in a challenging year this year, or you've been through a lot last year, or whatever. That is true. How can you live forward? How can you make next year better? How can you make tomorrow better? How can you make 15 minutes from now better? Right. And it's that constant seeking of trying to find the stairway up. You're still searching for it. You're not just giving up and you're like, well, I guess there's no stairs. I'll just stay here in this little pit here that of my own making, right? There are stairs somewhere, even if you got to carve them out of the wall. And to your point, Shaun, like, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to claw at a wall of clay until your fingernails bleed to get out of that hole? Sometimes that's required. You just have to know what you're willing to do. It's a very difficult situation to deal with. Shaun, you got any additional thoughts on this?
None other than I think the only missing piece to this equation is understanding the importance of immediate action, not deferring it to another day, to another year, another life. This is all we got. The stopwatch is ticking, man. And the time that we spend on this planet with our friends, with our family, with our dog, with our favorite coffee, all of this time is ticking. And there's no getting it back. And so the better we run our life, the better it is for everyone in our life. And so if you can't do it for yourself, go save the planet by being a better person to yourself, for yourself, within yourself. It's easy to defer the work, as you said, Chance. It is. I think we've all done it. We've all deferred. But once you know, once you hear, as you're hearing now, once you know that there is no room for that, the work has to be done, and you have to do it for yourself, because what you're doing is for everyone around you. And so forget about looking outward, looking for problems across the street. Look at problems inside your life, inside your inner world, inside your mind. By working on yourself internally, the external world is better for it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Seb, you got any points to add?
You know, as hard as the work is going to be, it's not as hard as the compounding of the lack of work and the circumstances that are coming on as the lack of work. It's just not. And so give yourself this Christmas the gift of work. Give yourself the gift of work that impacts the things that you've been putting off. You know, the deep-seated things, the things that you need to be healed about, the things that you don't even know you need to heal on. All of the things start yesterday.
Yeah. There's a great line, and then I'll do some final thoughts and we can shut her down for the afternoon. But great line that I keep with me, it's one of my little mantras, is when is the best time to plant a tree? 25 years ago. When is the second best time to plant a tree? Right frickin' now. Like, until you really accept that, the work will always be tomorrow. It'll always be the next day. It'll always be next week. It'll always be something else. Like, if there was a point in time where I put my pants on and I was wearing a 36 waist, and a 36 waist is pretty wide for me. And I was like, I put them on and they were tight. Like, I didn't need a belt. And I was like, nope, not letting that get out of hand. Now, I could have waited until I was a 40. Could have waited until I was a 42 or a 48 or having to go to the big and tall store, whatever. I could have waited that long and then tried to fix something. But to your point, Seb, it's a lot harder to start there than it is to start today, right now. So let's get some final thoughts. Anything at all on everything that we've talked about? Because we've kind of gone across the board here. Anything still bubbling on the back of your brain, Seb?
Not really, frankly. I'm kind of a dry well right now because we've been going strong for an hour. It's been an awesome conversation, guys. I couldn't think of a better way to spend this near Christmas holidays here than with my brothers and having a conversation that's deeply meaningful. So I appreciate that, and to anybody who's watching this, I appreciate you watching it as well.
Yeah. I love coming on here. This is why I keep coming every day. This is so much fun. Shaun, final thoughts?
So I'm just going to play with your jeans comment on how you were heading towards size 40, etc. And I think it's a really important point. It didn't seem like an important point as you were putting it across until you think about it a little bit deeper. And I'm talking about the audience thinking about it a little bit deeper. And that is the jeans, the size was a metric. That was a moment that when it went from one size to another size, that metric was the trigger for Chance to say, whoa, hang on a sec. Now, if you don't have metrics in your life, if you don't have patterns in your life, if you don't pay attention to the weight you're gaining, the sleep that you're not getting, the amount of alcohol that you're drinking, what you're doing in your life, if you don't have metrics, if you can't understand your balance and your extremes, if you don't consider these kind of things, life will slip away. One day you'll wake up and you'll be 60 and you suck. That's the way life is, man. If you ain't paying attention, it unfolds, and then one day you wake up and you don't recognize yourself. So you've got to pay attention on the daily, and you definitely need metrics. I'm not saying anyone out there has to figure out what weight they want to walk around or what jean size they want to be at. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is consider your patterns in life. Set some metrics. Be honest with yourself and stick to the plan of, I never want to be in a size 1 million jean. These are things that you have to lock in as milestones or guiding lights. And if you don't have them now, take this Christmas period to think about who you are right now, maybe what size jeans you wear, what size jeans you want to be in next year, and how you're going to do that. And I'm using jeans as the metric, but it is simply the proxy for all things in life require attention to life.
Attention and action. That's the key. Is I really can't thank you guys enough. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I hope everybody that's watching is having a really great season. But if not, take the time, utilize this season, make it your stepping off point, and you can push into the new year in better fashion than perhaps where you are right now. So I really appreciate you guys being here for the combo. And as we all continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see y'all next week.